Hi everyone, I'm Ebony Tara Scurry, the Career Architect, and you are watching Careercraft. I help people earn more money and have more freedom with a successful career by their own standards. From resumes to career exploration. Hi, welcome to this edition of Careercraft. Happy to be with you today. And we're going to start off with some workplace wisdom. And I want to talk to you a bit about an article that came out just a couple weeks ago. And it was an article in Federal Times, and it's about a new bill that has been introduced. And this new bill will allow agencies to share information about the applicants. So if you apply to a federal agency, that information that you use to apply for that job can then also be shared with another agency and another agency. So I don't like that idea. The reason why that bill has been proposed is because the federal government wants to increase efficiencies. They want to make things go faster. However, we have to be very careful about what is faster versus what's accurate, and what is faster and what is really more meaningful. Let's say, okay, you can share information with other agencies based on the applicant, but let's say if I interview with agency A and I was having a bad day, I didn't interview that well, so I want to go and apply to another agency, and they say, well, they're able to look at possibly the information that was used in my previous interview. They were able to look at information from a previous interview and then make a decision based on, let's say, old, outdated information. Or I just had a bad day, but that's not really how I would, answer the same questions for a different position, even though it's similar position. So I'm not too crazy about that. Also, let's say if now you can share applicant information, let's say, maybe I want a clean slate. Maybe that's the reason why I'm moving from one agency to another, is because I want a clean slate. I don't want people to have information that maybe I don't feel the same way anymore, or, when I'm applying to a different job, I may present different information. So maybe I don't want that information shared. And also, what's to say that the information that was shared is still up to date and relevant? It could be outdated. Maybe the resume I use with one agency has been updated, and now the one that I want to use for somewhere else, it's a completely new resume, but let's say now that people can share things, they're using outdated information. What kind of safeguards are going to be put in place to ensure that information that's shared is still accurate and updated? I don't know. And the bill, from what I've seen, doesn't really address that too much, and so that bothers me a bit. So I would like us to kind of keep an eye on this. I don't think it's a good idea. I like the intention, but I think there's other ways to increase efficiencies and make the hiring process smoother. Workplace wisdom, it's actually one of my favorite parts of the show. It's fun to see what are the new things coming out that could be relevant to everybody or a lot of people who are applying to jobs. So I really like to look at the current events and all that great stuff. And if you see a current event out there that you'd like me to comment on, please, by all means, email it to me, Facebook me, Twitter me, and I'm happy to address it on the show. All right, let's move on to the next section of the show, and this is called Ask the Career Architect. This is where you send me questions. You can call me and leave me a message. You can Facebook me, you can email me, you can Twitter me. There are plenty of ways that you can contact me with your question. And so this next question we have is from Gordio. And he says, I worked for a major car company selling cars, and I consistently received awards and high commissions. Despite all that, I got laid off. I caught a case in between jobs, and now I'm selling auto parts instead of cars. I'm not making nearly as much as before. I haven't been able to get a job with the big car companies because of their policies against my criminal record. What can I do? Very good question, Gordio. A few things here. You have a fantastic track record of success in terms of being an auto salesperson. Whenever you leave a job, you want to always, without fail, get reference letters from the people who you have worked with. And so you don't want to just ask people, hey, can you serve as a reference for me in the future? You want to actually get a letter, because letters, they just live forever. And sometimes people's numbers change, people's emails change. It can be hard to get in touch with people. So a letter is something you always have. When you get that letter, scan it into your computer so you never lose it. You know, email it to yourself as well. So these reference letters, if you have them, if you don't, I would encourage you to contact the places you used to work at where you had such that great track record. Ask them for it, but if you do have it, that's great. And in these reference letters, you want to talk about these things. You want these reference letters to talk about how you exceeded sales goals, how you were great with customers, all that wonderful stuff, okay? That way, when you apply to other jobs, you can use these reference letters as evidence of the great things that you've done. This is very important. So if you don't have the letters, go get them, all right? Another thing, so an employer can ask about your criminal history, but they can't discriminate against you based on that. And another thing, let's say if you have a friend who they committed, let's say, the same crime that you committed, but that company hires them and not you, but let's say you're more qualified, and the only reason, you know, they hired that other person was maybe they were black or white or whatever it is, you can't use race in any kind of equal employment opportunity protected class in a discriminatory way. In other words, if a company says that they don't hire people because of certain things, they have to apply that policy across the board regardless of race, age, and whatnot. Hi, Amethyst. Mama's recording her show. Come here, sweetie. Hey, sweetheart. Hey, baby. How you doing? Hey, sweetie. Okay. Okay, so we'll take a quick break, and I'll occupy my daughter, and we'll get back to the show. Say hi to the camera. You want to say hi? Come on, sweetie. Now, federal law allows employers to ask about your criminal history. I mean, employers have a right to know if someone has a criminal history, if they may be a danger to the people they work with, to the customers that they serve. Now, keeping that in mind, let's say if you're applying to an accountant position and your criminal record says that you stole money or something like that, that would be very relevant to this accounting. The point that I'm making here is what you've done in your past, depending on how relevant it is to the job that you're applying for, that may be a big factor. Don't get discouraged though if the job you're applying for now has very little to do, to nothing to do with whatever crime you committed in the past, okay? Companies can ask, and they should ask, about your criminal history. They cannot take into account any arrest you may have had. It's all about conviction. I work with people who the job application asks them to talk about anything that they've been convicted of in the past that's within the last 10 years or that's, you know, relevant or whatnot. And then on the application they write about stuff, they explain it, but when they actually look at what their background check was, it's not even mentioned on there. You know, it was expunged from their record. So, lesson learned. Take a look at what your criminal record says before you go talking to an employer about it. Also, if an employer doesn't hire you because of your criminal record, you have a right to ask them to take a look at whatever they use to make that decision. Many employers, they will say on the application that based on the information you provide, that's not going to be our sole reason for hiring you or not hiring you. So they are required to take other things into account. So you want to, you know, be aware of if that's the sole reason they're not hiring you. Now, we all have our biases and things like that, so here's another tip for you. There is almost always a part on the application that when they ask you about what you've done in your past, if you've been convicted of a felony or whatnot, they give you some space to explain what happened. Use that opportunity talk about it on your cover letter, add a completely new document to the application. And I've worked with people on this before, and so this is something that you should spend a significant amount of time for. The reason being that this is possibly, and as you stated in your question, one of the main barriers that you're finding as you try to move forward with getting a new job. So, when you find that something is a barrier, spend the time to really work on that. So create a document that really goes through and talks about what happened and why you're not that same person, and why you're the best fit for this job, and how what you did in your past isn't going to impact your ability to do the job now, and maybe how actually what you've done in your past benefits you and makes you a better employee. That's what I help people to craft, to take something negative and turn it into a positive. Now you're a better person. You've learned things. You've, so and so. So talk about that. Craft a document. Have people look at that for you to give you feedback on, making sure that you're aware of how you're being perceived. All right. So again, keep that in mind. Here's your action. They hire people with criminal records all the time, and there are some employers who are really good at that and feel comfortable with it, and others that they just don't want to deal with it. So do a little research and find out what employers are really, have a track record of hiring people with criminal records, and those that don't. And also, when you craft your letter of explanation about what happened, be sure to talk about any rehabilitation that you've done. The age you were when it happened can have a big effect on things. So talk about any rehabilitation that you've gone through. The age that you were when you did what you did, that also can play a factor as well. If you were 15, if you were young, and it's been a long time, that can make a big difference. Also, how serious was it? Did you kill someone? Our next question is from Charles. He says, I sent my resume to the Career Services Center at my school. They changed my email to a more professional one and deleted one of the bullets under one of my previous jobs. Besides that, they didn't change anything. I know my resume can be better. I thought they would really help me. Should I complain about it to the school or try to fix it myself? Good question. So, Charles, thank you for writing into the show. I would not complain to your Career Services Department quite yet. One thing that strikes me about what you said is you said, I sent my resume to Career Services. So what I'm hearing is you sent your resume to them, and when you got it back, you expected, some magical document to come back looking all great and wonderful. Now, here's the thing. When I work with folks, they don't just send me their resume and I fix it up all pretty and send it back. I have conversations with them. I ask them very detailed questions. Okay, you said you supervise people. How many people did you supervise? When? What kind of positions did you supervise? What kind of, so on. And you want to quantify things. You want to qualify things. You want to create a context around things. There's a really nice method when you create bullets on your resume called the CCAR method. What's the context? What's the context? What was the challenge you faced? What was the action you took in that situation? What was the result of the actions that you took? That's the CCAR method. You can use that as a template for crafting the bullets on your resume. So if your resume reads like a job description, these are my duties, this is what I was responsible for, that's not going to cut it very well. And what you need to have is a conversation with them. Make an appointment with them to talk about your resume, to go through each of your bullets, to make sure that you've pulled out everything you need to pull out. And also, you want to have a job that you're applying to, because whenever you have a resume and in your cover letter, you want to make sure that it's very targeted to the job that you're applying to. So if you just are trying to update your resume in a generic fashion, yeah, it's not going to look so hot, You want to have something to compare it to in terms of something targeted so that you have a direction your resume is going. So if you're not having a conversation with them, if you're expecting them to just, you're not giving them too much to work with. So make an appointment with them. When you update your resume, you have to take a lot of responsibility in that as well. And so When you sent your resume to Career Services, did you tell them what your long-term goals are? Did you tell them what kind of jobs you're actually applying to? So it can be hard for them to help you if they're not given enough information. But that should come from your initiative. You should tell them these things. So make an appointment with them, and I think that the outcome of that is going to be really great. The next section of the show is called How is My Document Doing? And this is where you send me your resumes, your cover letters, your applications, any kind of job-related document that you'd like me to take a peek at and give you some feedback on. So we received a resume from Junior, and Junior's resume, his email was big boy something other. And that's not a professional email, so we want to make sure that our email is very professional. And objective says this: seeking to obtain a position to make use of my skills in customer service and supply management to successfully provide staff support to a reputable organization. Now, he starts off talking about what he wants. He wants to obtain a position to make use of his skills, his this and that. You want to be employer-focused, not self-focused. And then he says to support a reputable organization. That's very, very generic. So under your objective, you want to be specific, not generic. Specify the exact position that you're applying for, specify the exact organization, and how you will add value to that organization, not what you want to get out of the job that you're trying to apply to. Under skill sets, this is very generic too. Oral and written communication, customer service. A lot of people have that on their resume. That doesn't add any value here. It's not quantified or qualified at all. Under education and training, Junior, he lists what college he's going to and his expected graduation date and his major, which is great. The kind of degree he's getting, that's great. He lists the city and state of his school. However, later on in the education and training part, he says he has a plumber's helper certification, in what year he got that, but he doesn't say the name of the school. I don't know why. He doesn't say what city and state he got that certification. I don't know why. So that's kind of weird. Why do you have all this information for one part but not for this part? So you want to be consistent on your resume. Okay. His bullets have those key action words, ensured, maintained, assisted, communicated. All of that is good, but the kind of good stuff stops there. Once you get into the meat of the bullet, there's no substance. It talks about maintained an organized, clean, and safe work area. Okay. That reads like a job, duty, or responsibility. Someone else may have the exact same duty or responsibility. So how does that separate him in a unique way? It doesn't. So use the C-card method to craft your bullets, and that'll help a lot. Okay. Here's an example of a bullet. Fixed minor plumbing problems, unclogged drains, and repaired leaky spigots and faucets. Okay. Quantify that. How many faucets did you fix in a day? Talk about some of the things where you work with customers and so on. So the resume is okay, but it's not exciting. It's not different. And there's so many people applying to jobs, you have to be a little exciting. You have to be a little different to really stand out. And Junior also sent in his reference page, which is neat. I like having something else to look at here. And a couple things. The word references, it's not in the middle. It's kind of off to the side for some reason. I don't know, but you want to put it in the middle. And the same heading that you use on your resume, you should use that on your reference letter as well, because the documents go together. They're a pair. So you want to throw on the reference page, I don't see his name on it. So, if I'm an HR person and I'm, shuffling through papers, I don't know whose reference page this even belongs to. So on your reference page, again, if you have the same heading that you have on your resume, if this page gets separated from the resume, then they still know whose reference page it is. That's really important. And then finally, this reference page has 4 different people referenced. 3 of them are from the college this person attends, and 1 is from a private business owner. So that's a problem. Why is Junior not listing any of the previous employers he worked at as a part of his references? That, to me, as an HR person, raises a red flag. Why can't he have any reference from other places he works at? Why are they all academic and then one is some business owner who I don't even know how they even know Junior? They didn't work with them in the past. It doesn't look like based on their resume. So that's a problem that, you know, could be fixed. So Junior, if you can get references from these past jobs, do that. Get a reference letter as well, and get permission to use them, to use their information on your reference list. It makes a big difference to use references from places you used to work. It can be good to have references from places you didn't work at for personal and character building kind of things, but this is a job you're applying to. Have references from the last places you worked. We have a video, and this video comes from Kelvin Brown, and he says,
Kelvin Brown, and I have a question. I am a military officer. I will be retiring within the next 3 to 6 years, and I'm trying to get into the job market. How do I promote myself being in one field and having a broad range of experience in a number of areas? How do I promote myself as a military guy to the corporate market? Thank you.
a couple things. So, number one, it's great, it's fantastic that you're a veteran. I know you're looking at corporate jobs, but in the federal government there's a very specific veterans preference that you can get a few legs up versus an applicant coming in with no military experience at all. Secondly, one thing that's very new is that now there are some organizations out there who are applying veterans preference. This is something that I have not seen before to the extent that it's happening now. You've got organizations like Starbucks and a number of other places who are having these huge, hiring veterans initiatives. So Google, do research online, find out what are these organizations out there who are specifically looking for veterans, and then apply to those kind of jobs because they're specifically looking for you. So go to where you're really wanted and you're going to have a much easier job finding a job. Another thing you want to do is the kind of resume that you probably have now reflects a lot of, or it may reflect a lot of military lingo and language. And so be sure that now that you're applying to the private sector or the federal government, you want to make sure that your resume reflects language that is going to be readily understandable in the corporate market and in the federal government. So even though the military is kind of a part of the federal government in many ways, they don't still recognize the same language that's used. So just be aware of that when you're crafting your resume. So the same resume that you use to apply to different military jobs is going to be a different resume than what you apply to federal and corporate jobs. You also said that you're going to be retiring in 3 to 6 years. I would highly, again, recommend the federal government. The federal government, they just passed a law and they're working on some tweaking these policies and things that will allow retired federal employees to actually come back as contractors in a really cool way that allows them to get their pension plus make a paycheck. And I don't think that the corporate sector has something of the equivalent. They may, but I don't really know about that. But I do know for sure the federal government, they have been doing this and they're making the plan and that kind of situation easier to do and clearer. So since you're retiring, that is definitely something that I encourage you to look into. And a lot of people are looking for that kind of leadership that comes from the military. Here's another thing. You mentioned specifically corporate jobs. Now, if you do not have any post-traumatic stress syndrome, any kind of those related issues, that's going to help you a lot in trying to find a corporate job. There are biases out there, and we just have to be honest with ourselves that there are. There are people out there who feel that they don't want to hire military veterans because they're crazy and they're going to shoot up the place because they have things going on in their mind that make them crazy. That may not be the case. For some it may be, and for others it's not. But in a lot of people's minds, they think that all veterans are that way. So, if you apply to federal jobs, you will actually benefit from having some kind of psychological or physical issue. The government gives you points and they rate you higher if you could show that you have those kind of disabilities. all right, in those kind of medical situations that will help you to get a job in the federal sector. That will not help you get a job in the corporate sector. So here's a tip. When you're interviewing for jobs in the corporate sector, tell them, say, you know what, by the way, I just want you to know, I don't have any post-traumatic syndrome issue, nothing like that. I don't have any, I'm not 80% or 10% or whatever disabled. Employers cannot and should not ask you those kind of things, but you can offer it. And in this case, when you're coming from military, applying to the corporate sector, you can just say it because it's only going to help you. Because then someone can say, oh, okay, well, at least I don't have to assume that he has some kind of issue because he told us he doesn't. Okay? Whereas some people will just assume that all veterans have that issue. All right? So again, if you do have that kind of issue, federal job is going to be the place for you where that can actually help you. Corporate sector, not so much. As we come to a close in this episode, we talked about a variety of things. I share with you my opinion about the new bill that's been proposed that allows agencies to share your applicant information. I don't know why I would want my information shared with another agency that could be obsolete, whatever. I don't like it. We also talked about how to apply to jobs when you have a criminal record. You have to be aware of the equal employment opportunity laws that come into play in those circumstances. We have to take advantage of the fact that we're asked about these things, and we have an opportunity to support ourselves and to say, hey, yes, I did this, but this is why, and this is how it's not going to harm me as I move forward with this position that I could take in your company, and how actually what I did helps me to be a better employee and all that stuff. So, have a document that really vouches for yourself, because if you don't vouch for it, people are going to come up with all these explanations in their mind about why this and that. So you want to be open and honest about it. And also, don't volunteer that information until you're asked. And be aware of what's in your criminal record. Check it yourself, because you may be sharing things that may not even be on your record anymore, and you could be hurting yourself. So know what you got going on. It's kind of like when you have a credit report. Know what your credit score is. Check it yourself so you see what other companies are seeing when they check your credit and all that stuff. We also talked about when we submit our resumes and cover letter times, if we're a student somewhere, we don't take advantage of our Career Services Center as we should. There are just fantastic resources. So take advantage of your Career Services Center, but also know that it's your responsibility. You play a part as well. So don't just email your resume or cover letter and all that to them, but make an appointment to sit down with them, talk to them about your resume, talk to them about your goals and the jobs that you're trying to apply for. If they offer any occupational assessments where they can do assessments to see, what kind of fields you may be interested in, take those assessments. They're free for you in most cases because you go to that school. And those can be a really great opportunity to learn more about what you may be interested in, even though you think you may be interested in already. If you have already graduated school, if you're an alumni, you can go back to your Career Services Center and get help on your resume, get help on finding jobs and network. We also looked at Junior's resume, and his resume was good, but it wasn't interesting, and it wasn't something that made him stand out. You've got to have a resume that's interesting. You've got to have a resume that stands out. And in order to do that, you want to really be able to showcase a little bit of your personality. You can use your cover letter to help you do that as well. Also, you know what? A resume is a formal document. Many times it's just a formality. This is why one of the best ways to find jobs is to network. Network with people. We're told this all the time, but it's so true. It's so true, and it never stops being true. Because the fact is this: I've seen people with mediocre resumes get great jobs, not because of their resume, but because of their charisma, but because they knew someone who didn't care about the resume. They just knew that this person was qualified because they've seen the work that they've done. They like the person, they know the person, someone vouched for them, and they got a job. So sometimes your resume doesn't even matter that much when you have these other factors that come into play. So either you need a top-notch resume if you don't know anyone and you don't have that charisma yet and all that, if you're not able to network, or if your resume is mediocre, network your butt off and try to get in there in another way. Okay? Best case scenario, you have both. You have the great resume and you're networking like crazy, using your contacts to help move you forward, to give you a leg up. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. And last but not least, we talked about Kelvin, who is in the military and he's transitioning out and he wants to work in the corporate sector. And there are a lot of corporations out there who are specifically hiring veterans and people with military experience. That being said, there's still a lot of assumptions out there about people who have military experience. They think all of them have been on the battlefield and most of them have post-traumatic or some kind of other syndrome that they don't know about, that they don't want to know about, and they don't want working in their corporation. So if you don't have something like that going on, tell them about it. They can't ask you those questions, but you can offer up that information because it's only going to help you. If you do have something like that going on, if you're disabled, you're claiming some kind of disability or post-traumatic stress syndrome, then the federal government is actually more the place for you because that can actually help you to better qualify for jobs having that kind of disability. The federal government has always been on the forefront of hiring people with disabilities, whether it's post-traumatic syndrome and military folks without limbs and so on, or if it's people with Down syndrome and people that have other emotional or physical issues that cause them to just need some general accommodation. The federal government has always been the benchmark for helping people to get jobs with basic accommodations. So if you have any of that kind of stuff going on, that will help you a lot in the federal government. So even though that question was about Kelvin and his military experience, any of you out there who has some kind of disability or something, apply to federal jobs because that disability actually gives you points that help you better qualify for positions. If you're minimally qualified, at least you can actually beat out someone who's more qualified than you just because you have the disability. Okay? So maybe instead of applying to all these corporate places, people that, now not all corporations have biases, but a lot of them do, apply to the federal government instead, and you may see a change in the response you get from your job applications. So thank you so much for joining me in this episode. I have so much fun with you guys. Send me your questions. Email them to me, Facebook me, Twitter me, call me, leave me a message. Connect with me. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'm enjoying sharing this information with you. One of the things that I'll be doing as well is this show is about 20 minutes to 30 minutes long. I'm going to be cutting it into shorter installments as well so that you can watch certain parts of it in addition to the whole show. So if there's a certain part that you're interested in. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. And remember, you absolutely deserve to achieve your destiny. Give yourself a chance and invest in yourself. See you next time.